Well, hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to another edition of CHP Talks. And I'm here today with a very special guest, Mr. Vince Byfield. Vince is the son of the late Ted Byfield. Many of our listeners will know that name. And Ted, of course, for those who know him, it was a truly iconic figure in the reform movement, especially in the Western provinces of Canada. The Byfield family published the BC Report magazine, the Alberta Report, the Western Report. And by the way, my wife and I used to fight over these issues when they came into our home. So we wanted to read what Ted and his other son, Link, had written. But they together mobilized a generation of concerned citizens to get involved, to pay attention to current events in Canada, and to challenge the left-leaning assumptions of government, both federal and provincial. The Byfield family also published a very significant collection of hardcover books detailing the history of Christianity, simply called The Christians, the First 2,000 Years. And every family in Canada should own a copy of a set of these books. Very informative, very powerful. Vince Byfield, our guest today, is currently working on a book highlighting the contributions of Christianity to civilization. Vince lives in Edmonton with his wife and children and is a voice for freedom, morality, and personal responsibility. So Vince, thank you for joining us today. By the way, before we launch in, I'll just let people know I am in a Tim Hortons in Bowmanville, Ontario. Elaine and I are continuing our journey across the country. This is our third Tim Hortons interview on this trip. And we will be in Ottawa tonight for the Canada Strong and Free conference the next few days. And then next week, we'll be there for the March for Life on May 12th. Vince, thank you for joining me today, squeezing us into your schedule. We look forward to hearing about the book you're working on.
Thank you for having me. It's an honor to be on your show, Rod.
Well, first I want to ask you, what was it like growing up in the Byfield home? A lot of people would think, you know, what would that be like with Ted Byfield himself there? And of course, it was your dad. So just tell us a little bit about that experience.
Well, if I would be brutally honest, Ted Byfield wasn't there in that home. Dad accomplished many things in his life, and he wouldn't have done that by sitting on a Chesterfield. So Dad, frankly, you know, there is good and bad to working and living with such a soul, and some of us in the family, some of his children learned that the one way to become really close to your father in such a situation is to work for your father. So that was my story. I started working for Dad when I was the ripe old age of 8, getting the princely sum of 60 cents an hour back in 1973 when the first issues of the magazine were coming out. So but what was it like? I don't think that's a fair question to ask of a son or a daughter, because we are colored in our viewpoints. I think that we don't see our dad the way God sees our dad. We see, you know, all children, I think, grow up thinking first that their mom and dad are demigods in their own way, and then you know, puberty sets in, adolescence sets in, and we realize their many and various flaws, and at that point in life, some of us rise above that and learn to forgive and love our parents, and others will never be able to forgive the fall through no fault of their own, really. It's all our own perceptions. And I was probably a mixture of both of those, but I'm immensely proud to call myself a son of Ted, and I'm very honored to have been part of much of what he has done.
Yeah, I'm sure that you have had some notable personalities in your home. We were honored
Oh,
to
yeah.
have your dad in our home way back, I don't know, 25 years ago or so, when he came to speak to our pro-life group in northern British Columbia. But I'm sure you had a series of political personages and writers and activists of various sorts passing through your home while you were young.
Very many. And many of them are still playing an influential role today, right? So I don't want to drop names, but
Yeah,
there's quite a few.
And I understand that Jonathan Van Maren is writing a biography of your father. Can you tell us anything about that before we get on to the book that you're writing?
Well, sure. Yesterday, the cover just came in, the draft of the cover. The book is going to be called Prairie Lion. So this is a manuscript. I won't go into it. Jonathan's done a stellar job. I'm really excited. We're hoping to have it available by, I would say, early August. It's very hard to get things printed right now because there's shortages of paper and all of the economic woes that beset our civilization. He spent, I think he said he's recorded almost 100 hours of interviewing with Dad. He's poured over the archives, the family archives. He has interviewed dozens of people who knew Dad well. And I think he's done an exceptional job with this book. So I'm really looking forward to it coming out. So yeah, that's about all I can tell you right now.
Well, Jonathan is a great writer. He's got a great mind, a great intellect, and a good perspective on the affairs of our world and our nation. And certainly I've seen his a tribute to your dad that he wrote that was very powerful and well written. So that's exciting. And then the book that you're working on, The Fruits of Christendom. I want to ask you about that. Where are you at with that? What's the well, just give us a broad view of that book.
Sure.
Christendom.
Right. So a little bit of background first. The Dad's last great opus was a 12-volume series. You've mentioned it already. The Christians, their first 2,000 years. Pax, can you get me a calendar? The most recent calendar. So each of the 12 books, it tells the story from the time of Christ to present day, and it very much tells it as a story. It's not an encyclopedia. People might think that, but it's not the case. It's designed to be read one volume, what's going to happen next sort of thing. And so many people tell me, I was just prior to this conversation on a call with a guy who kept saying over and over again, I had no idea of this. I had no idea of that. It really is astonishing what Christians have accomplished in our Lord's name over the centuries. That series has done exceptionally well. We've sold 185,000 volumes so far. I think it's 5,000 to qualify as a Canadian bestseller. So we're doing all right. The books, but one of the things that I asked Dad is that because it's so extensive, when you add up the word count for all 12 volumes, it's comparable to a Bible. It's about 750,000 words. So I asked Dad, if your average young person was to be, where in the books does it say, for example, that most of the universities that stand today or colleges were started by one church or another? Where is that? And he said, well, it's in there. And then I said, can you show me where? Because I couldn't find it. And so he then spent 3 days poring over the books himself, trying to find it. He couldn't find it, but he said, it's definitely implied. And it is. And I said, but the young people, or for that matter, any Christian, needs to be able to better defend their faith, especially today in this environment where many people in the media and in educational establishments are taking the view that Christianity has actually been more of a bane than a boon, and that is so far from the actual truth that it's very harmful for society as a whole. So I said, don't you think we need a book that states this information in a more readily accessible fashion? And so from that has been birthed this new book, Fruits of Christendom. So I'm going to pull out the poster for a moment.
Okay.
For
our viewers here, those who are watching in the video, you'll get to see a preview of some of this work. For our listeners, you'll just have to imagine it. So here.
Yeah, I'll try to respect that. So it's one volume, but each of the volumes, each of the chapters, there's 10 chapters in it. Each chapter will focus on an aspect of modern life. For example, there's a chapter on science. There's a chapter on healthcare. There's a chapter on business. There's a chapter on education. There's also more societal-based ones. For example, there's one on government. There's one on human rights. There's one on war. And each of these instances, we go through the 2,000 years. We identify the major advances in that area. And then we drill in to discover what roles Christians played in those advances. And what we are discovering is that in almost every instance, Christians played pivotal roles almost all the time. And these are usually not just any Christians. These are very ardent, sincere, earnest Christians. So an example, obvious example, is Sir Isaac Newton. He is well known to most people as the father of many scientific laws, the law of gravity, the laws of motion. What's not as well known is that for every word that he wrote on the topic of science, he wrote 4 words on biblical prophecy.
Well,
and so now, being a scientist, much of what he went on to look into would be viewed as heresy today. But what I'm trying to point out is that he had an intense interest. It's normal for a scientist to sort of go into areas that would be considered heretical but I want to point out there is nevertheless an intense interest in the spiritual realm, just in that one instance. And this is, but hardly anybody knows that he wrote 4 times as much on spiritual matters, and that to me is a wrong that our educational establishment has chosen to not right. And so both right in terms of WR, but also right as in making correct. So,
I'm sure you'll cover things like the building of hospitals, the establishment of
yes.
universities.
Yes. Actually, it's
I realize.
That's an excellent point. The building of hospitals was one of the ones that got me going on this. I had seen a popular film that was talking about the first hospital being Islamic. And I thought, well, that's not how I remember things. So I started digging into it. And sure enough, it's been corrected now, but the Wikipedia page said, yes, the first hospitals were in Islam. And so I looked into it some more. I was curious who Wikipedia would source for that. And so they had sourced the National Library of Medicine, which meaning the American Library of Medicine. And there they had just a page that stated, yes, the first hospital was Islamic, but they didn't state their source. The person who had written the page didn't identify themselves. And so this is what Wikipedia was giving as the be all and end all. But if anyone who's done any kind of research on this knows that was one of the lesser known edicts from the Council of Nicaea that in this new, so Nicaea, the Council of Nicaea was a lot was established at that time. That's essentially when, around the time that the Roman Empire was becoming Christian. And so they were building newfound cathedrals throughout the empire. And it was also dictated that next to each of the cathedrals would be a hospital. And there's further evidence to corroborate that hospitals. There's been manuscripts found that predate Islam by over 200 years, which were essentially the first medical manuals in terms of what to do in this instance or that instance. So there's a lot of strong evidence that the hospitals as we know today definitely predate Islam. And I'm not trying to knock Islam. I'm just wanting to make sure that the record is correct. It's this sort of thing that this new book we hope to address. Other ones that are common is, I'm sure you've heard this, Rod. Someone might just sort of say casually that religion is the cause of all war. It's a very common refrain, and it couldn't be further from the truth. There's 2 encyclopedias that have that have tried to chronicle over 1,000 major conflicts in human history, recorded human history, and they try to dig into the root causes of each of these conflicts. And they determined that less than 6% of all war has as its primary cause religious motives. And of that 6%, 5 of the 6% are Islamic wars, or initiated under the name of Islam. So Christianity, and by that matter, all the other religions, Buddhism, etc., amount to less than 1% of war. The vast majority of wars are, surprise, surprise, motivated by greed in one way or another.
Well, that's that kind of, there's a biblical, background for that. The Apostle James, the writer James says, from where do wars come from among you? Don't they come from the lusts that war in your flesh? You
exactly
have not, you kill, desire to have, and you cannot.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So we have this because, to be fair, a lot of technological progress has occurred in the last few centuries, especially, and it does seem to be accelerating. But human nature, as far as I can tell, has not changed one whit. And all that we are accomplishing is learning to do things more efficiently. Right now, that's saving lives, but it could easily turn on a dime to extinguishing life.
Yeah.
So we need to be conscious of that at all times. And so anyway, carry on.
When do you think that your book will be available? Or do you have a kind of a date in mind?
Yeah, we're publishing the new book on a chapter by chapter basis, sort of in the days back in the 19th century. Books were done in this fashion. Dickens books, they publish one chapter and everyone wait for the next sort of thing.
Yeah.
Well, we're doing it kind of like that. We've got 5 of the 10 chapters in the works right now, and we're raising funds to hopefully be able to, with God's help, have the other 5 done next year. So when each of the chapters is finished, we will be publishing that chapter as on its own little book in softcover form. And that's for evangelical purposes. Churches may discover that book works. For example, the chapter on war, where we'll go over things like how the Code of Chivalry was formed, how the Red Cross Society was started, the Geneva Convention, always Christians involved in these efforts. That chapter may resonate with young men, for example. So churches may discover that having a little book like that is less intimidating for a generation that is become less accustomed to reading larger texts. So hopefully 5. So go ahead.
Are the first 5 chapters then, are they available now?
No, we're working on them right now. So we're hoping to have them ready by Christmas, and then the other 5 by next Christmas, and the book in its entirety by next Christmas.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
And where do people go to watch the progress, or to contribute to the cause, or to
Oh yeah.
get
So
ready to purchase when they can become available?
So I didn't have it handy, but maybe it's on the back of this calendar. thechristians.com is our website. Thechristians with an S.com. And you can always purchase our books there, and donate as well. We've got, if a person is able to donate $250 or more to the making of our next book, The Fruits of Christendom, we'll attribute them in the first printing, as a sponsor of the book, and in appreciation for the donation, and give them a copy of the first book when it's completed. So
ultimately, the book all 10 chapters will be published in a single book format, right?
Yeah. That's right. Very similar to the books that we have now. One of the things I want to point out is that when we do books, because Dad, being a newspaperman, he knew that smaller articles resonate with people who are unaccustomed to reading. So often you'll see these 1 page or 1/2 page spread over 2 smaller articles. We call them sidebars. So in the series that we did here, anecdotally, we've discovered that young people or people unaccustomed to reading history often would gravitate to those smaller articles first. So on average, we'd have 3 of these smaller articles. Here's one just sort of on the Cathedral of Washington. We found that young people would gravitate to those. So we averaged 3 per chapter in the series. We're cranking that up for this new one. So we're going to have 10 sidebars per chapter. So that means 10 chapters, 10 sidebars, a total of 110 articles in this next book, which, God willing, will all be penned by different authors. So we'll have 110 authors. We have 50 researchers involved with it. We have 50 academic professors who are helping validate it. All told, over 200 people involved in the making of a book. Dad said it'll either be a miraculous creation, or it'll be a dog's breakfast. We're praying for the former. But so far, it's been going amazingly well. When we need a researcher, but lo and behold, someone will literally call us and be perfectly suited for researching that particular area. It's just been, so far, I believe we've been very blessed.
Well, very exciting, Vince, and very necessary work at this time when the cancel culture is attacking our Christian heritage, our Christian roots, and basically unaware. Many people are so unaware of the contributions Christianity has made to our society. So we really appreciate that you are working on this. Look forward to those first chapters when they become available. And so folks, go to thechristians with an S on the end.com and follow this work, contribute if you're able to, and help Vince get this important work out to the public. And we're so grateful for you taking this on. It was a pleasure to meet you as we traveled through Edmonton, and to be in a home where so much has happened and is still happening there today. So God bless you. Any final words you'd like to leave with our listeners and viewers?
Well, I guess I just want to return the gratitude. I'm very thankful for the work that you have been doing, Rod, and the Christian Heritage Party. I believe that we need more Christians speaking up. There has been this attitude that the separation of church and state means that Christians should not involve themselves in affairs of state. And that couldn't be further from the truth. I think that what you are doing is absolutely vital to the restoration of peace and prosperity in this nation. And so I pray that you will be blessed, and the whole organization of the Christian Heritage Party will experience a tremendous resurgence and revival as more and more Christians come to develop the intestinal fortitude to speak up. And so God bless you for what you're doing, Ron.
Well, thank you very much. So, folks, be sure to visit thechristians.com. Follow the work that Vince is doing on the fruits of Christendom. And this is a tremendous opportunity. Thanks for joining us today, Vince.
Thank you.
For all of our listeners and viewers, we'll see you again next week for another edition of CHP Talks. Thanks.
Bye-bye.